Today, I'm really excited to be joined by Alex Yablonsky, founder of Savvy Solutions, who's built and scaled a business in one of the most competitive industries, recruitment. From starting just before the pandemic to navigating mass layoffs and the rise of AI and more, Alex's journey is inspiring. Alex, thank you for joining me and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, David. It's a pleasure to be on.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you on as a guest. Really appreciate it. And Alex, for the guests who don't already know who you are, would you begin by giving us a bit of a brief introduction to yourself and your background?
Absolutely. So have been in staffing for years. Created my own business in 2020. The timing of that was very unique. We created the business, had the plan, had everything ready to go. Then the pandemic hit. So my first month in business was just nothing. It was nothing but hitting the reset button. So the first year we had to navigate what everyone else navigated in 2020, and that was nothing but mass layoffs. So starting a business then was probably not the ideal time, but looking back, it was the time that gave us the opportunity to really figure out what grit was in the industry and adversity. So during that time, it wasn't a lot of people wanting to use recruiting efforts. Everyone was staying home, working from home. And there was a lot of people, unfortunately, laid off. We kind of fine crafted our recruiting efforts in that time by doing nothing but pro bono work, right? We knew the right people. We still knew the clients. At the end of the day, we weren't going to wait 6 months or a year to make a profit off that person. We saw where the value was early in that, gave a few pro bono clients across the board. And from that built a relationship to what we have now. We're working, from the top of the East Coast to the bottom of the East Coast and in the Midwest. Within a 5-year span, we went, from 1 or 2 clients to really just blowing up. And that all really started from the hardest time in the very beginning and using leverage in that time and that situations, knowing that no one would be knocking down the doors to hiring a recruiting agency and all the talent that was out there. Connecting the dots really paved the way to where we're at now. That honestly just started with the relationship business and doing the right things.
Wow, I guess there's a lot to unpack there, but thanks for giving us the kind of the insight to maybe the poor timing, setting up the business. And I'm interested to sort of unpack some of those learns you've had along the way. You mentioned grit and determination, and it sounds like you've really used what objectively looks like a bad situation, starting a business at the start of the pandemic. You've actually used that in a real positive way. And I think your story really seems to kind of epitomize or personify, the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset of I can't control this. No one's hiring, no one's working, no one's spending on recruitment agencies. So talk to me then through, the early days of the business. Obviously, you didn't have kind of a crystal ball. You probably wouldn't have set up the business, I presume, had you knew that there was a pandemic looming. So talk to me through, obviously your early days in the business, the pandemic's hit. You're kind of scrambling. It's probably not been as much of an easy ride as you maybe expected, maybe what you were kind of used to. And, it was that big reset. So talk me around the kind of the early days of the business that kind of led to the decision of, doing the pro bono work and other ways you could get a bit creative of delivering value to clients who weren't.
Yeah, absolutely. So, there was no playbook for that time, right? Everything was new to us. So, you had 2 options. It's either quit and restart or just push through it. And that's the way we did it, right? There was so many things that are negative, but at the same time, there were so many opportunities. For everyone that got laid off, there was one great person in the market that was just open to any opportunity. So it was really taking the optimistic approach of a really tough time and connecting it with a business mindset. So from a recruiting standpoint, it was very easy to find talent, right? But from a business standpoint, it's not easy to get in the door with all the challenges that, the pandemic faced, whether it was economy based or working from home. So the one thing that I was really lucky enough to have was good relationships in some of these buildings. And we just kind of used the relationship and the human approach more than anything. So knowing that, it would have probably hurt a candidate's chance to tack on a fee at that time, what we did was kind of take that as a show us moment. So we then, had that rough patch where there was no reward on our end outside of a purpose. And that played a huge role of where we're at now. And because of that purpose, we were able to get the right people in the building, which, 5 years down the line, some of them are in a management role now. So doing the small things and the uncomfortable things is what everyone talks about. But doing the things knowing that there's a chance that it will pay off and taking that risk, if you're able to do it, we did it and it worked out. Now, everyone is human. At every position that was placed for free, I obviously looked at the cost and thought, wow, that could have been X, Y, and Z. We could have built this, and this. But I was also looking around where our competitors were at the time. And unfortunately, they were laying people off left and right because it's hard to bring in business when there's nothing to be had. We were small at the time too, so we were able to weather that and kind of take that time to practice. We were so used to being in an industry where we had to react nonstop that we were able to put a proactive approach on the recruiting process, even more to what we had in advance. So between building the book of business, lining up the candidate's personality with the company, right? We're not just hitting metrics. We're really connecting the dots on both sides. And because of the timing of everything, we're able to do that at our own pace, which was fast and it was to the point, and we didn't have to worry about was a budget approved. So we were able to show them how quick that we can move and the people that we had. It took a hit on us, right? It wasn't anything that was breaking the bank or doing anything fun. But from a long-term and a human approach, we were able to bring so many right people in the right organizations that our value was seen across the board. And we had people that not only got hired through us, but we really connect the dots and try to make it a long-term move for them. So a good amount of the people that we placed during that time have moved up within these companies. And now it's almost like it's the fruit of the labor coming back to us. Now we have established relationships through those hard times, and it's so far going well.
Brilliant. Well, I'm so glad to hear it. And I think it's interesting. This segues into, kind of next theme I wanted to explore with you. But I think it's interesting when I speak to kind of a lot of recruitment companies, and obviously up until recently I was working in a recruitment company myself. I think there's a lot of people trying to reinvent the wheel and trying to differentiate themselves. It's the recruitment industry itself, as I mentioned before, is very competitive. It's very saturated. There's a lot of people, offering the same services, on paper. So how you can stand out becomes a question that everyone's, thinking about. And I think what you did and how you responded during the pandemic really exemplifies one of the ways in which you can separate yourself from others, where some of the bigger agencies or maybe similar sized ones were laying people off and just shutting their doors down to these businesses who weren't paying. Instead, you still delivered value to those clients during that period. It wasn't a case of them not wanting to work with you. It was a case of they didn't have budget. And by showing them that value and showing them the value of your services during that period and accepting that you weren't going to get paid for it, not only have you allowed them to kind of witness and benefit from your services, but also importantly, as you mentioned, those people have moved up into more senior level roles. So you've got champions within the business, champions of your service and your business, who are now in more kind of influential positions, who can probably do a lot of your kind of prospecting and your business development for you, where should there be an opportunity coming up in their team, you're automatically going to be the first person in mind for them. So that, as I said, segues into the kind of the next question I was going to ask you. And, it's something we've explored and spoken about quite a lot, is the importance of building relationships. I think at times, given the kind of competitiveness in the market, given the layoffs and the drying up of jobs, there's always a risk of recruits becoming heavily transactional. They will be sort of very sales focused, and they will thinking more volume over value, and that can, service that's being delivered to the end client. So I guess my question is how important have building those good quality relationships been to you and your business?
Absolutely. That's a great question too. And I know we talked about it off air as well, but it's huge. It's everything. I actually had coffee with a CTO this morning, and he was telling me about everyone in the landscape, this, and how, there is other recruiting firms. It's rare that you're one of one, but how there is, another recruiting firm in the area. He known the client probably for about a decade, but never saw the face of this individual. And that really opened my eye, because I was shocked that even happened. One, but two, that, business is done that way. I really talk about the human approach, and that really goes back to everything that happened in the pandemic and still stuff that we do pro bono now, right? It's so much easier to build trust and to do the work in this industry when the guards are down. And the best way to do that is by proving it at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
We have been on the other side of sales call where we get, we'll do this for you, this for you, this for you, but it hasn't been shown. So why go through that effort?
Yeah.
From a recruiting standpoint and a relationship standpoint, I think we were really able to grow because guards were down across the board, right? We've came from transactional backgrounds where, you're waking up to hit your metrics, then you're going home. When you're in that kind of model, you do get a lot of production, right? But the long-term vision is really what counts. You could probably hit a few recs this month, that month, this month, really fill up the boards. But at the end of the day, there's still going to be people in those companies that are going to use that service. So if you threw one bad person out there that just did not work out, that's what's remembered, not all of the good ones. And from a relationship standpoint too, one thing that we do is we say no, not because we're that good, but really because we understand the market and we know what time means on both ends. So once there's transparency across the board, the guards are down and the product's great on both sides. The client and the person coming into that building, there's a clear and transparent understanding. And from there, just being able to do business doesn't feel like a 9 to 5. It's, talking with you or talking with someone else and just talking through a solution at that point. So the transactional part that, you've seen and came from, it gets the job done, but at what levels, right? You're opening yourself up to more mistakes than anything if you're firing away that quick.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And it kind of made me actually think about it. You compared kind of that long-term versus short-term thinking. And I think one of the kind of combinations can be with recruitment businesses is, around kind of KPIs and the expectation to get people out of ramp, delivering those numbers, bring those targets. And, they then fall into a trap of volume over value. I'd be interested in sort of unpacking and understanding a bit about how the mindset you've taken, the kind of the growth mindset with doing the pro bono work and that longer term vision, how that kind of plays out in your business and how you kind of empower your consultants in that sense, if you're happy to kind of share a bit of insight there.
Absolutely. So like I said, I've done the quick transaction back to back, but I've done that and I've seen what it did to a person. You get them in the job, they like it for, a few months, then they're miserable, then they're going back out into the market again. That reflects you more than that person, right? So the biggest thing for me and my mindset with all that was really that, how would I want to be viewed? If we took that, if we took me backwards and said, how would I want to be in this situation? That's how I took the approach. There's so much pressure in these buildings and these offices to get the job done so you could go home or you can get a promotion, this, that, and the other. But when you really take pride in what you do, and I think that's really what it comes down to, you truly find a great solution for both sides. And that's not saying that if you're turning stuff out quick, you don't take pride in it. But what I mean is when I talk to a candidate, I want to let them know what the next 5 years looks like. I want to let them know every single hurdle that's going to be thrown at them. I oversell the bad stuff versus the good to be transparent. Then from there, once the guards are down and everyone's relaxed, things just go so much smoother. But it has to be the mindset of positive versus negative. It's such a simple thing. Then taking really a pride aspect. There's certain things that you can't wake up early to do. And having pride in what you do and really caring about the solution on both ends makes the purpose and the work worth it too. And it just becomes easier. And people see that in you as well.
Yeah, it staggers me for what is a relationship driven business and a human obviously centered business, how little, from my experience and, kind of what I see, how little psychology actually kind of plays into it. Because at the end of the day, we're working with people and understanding, how you can get the best out of your consultants. If they've not got, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if they've not got psychological safety because they're worried about hitting KPIs, they're turning up to calls just looking for that close, being heavily transactional. They're not ever, despite the number of calls, whether they have 7 calls, 20 calls, they're not actually ever going to build past that surface level, being seen as a service provider. They're never actually going to build a quality kind of relationship with the hiring managers there. So as I said, it kind of staggers me how little, sometimes people kind of take into account, we're dealing with humans at the end of the day, and we can have all these kind of KPIs, and we can increase the KPIs and the targets for all of our consultants, and they could be hitting it. But at the end of the day, we're missing that kind of secret sauce, which is the human element. I think it's, it's problematic. Is there anything you'd add to that?
Absolutely. It's kind of funny that for recruiting industries have, peers or colleagues saying that they have hard times finding good people. And that makes me laugh every time. So I do believe in metrics. I do believe in KPIs, and I believe in them as a standard, right? Not as what you have to go with or you're not successful. We kind of do the opposite. This is what we expect you to do. And it's not hit the phones. It's not, set 100 meetings a week, but it's first fine tune your craft, right? Figure out everything and anything about the market. Then 2, be visible in these buildings. So from a sales aspect, we don't throw, this is what you got to do. We throw out all of the little steps that make sure that you get to the goal at the end, right? Yeah. So if you do the little things consistently, the big things come right in front of you.
Yeah.
So yeah, we don't push making 100 calls or, setting 15 meetings or doing anything like that. We push the relationship and the market knowledge. Those 2 will be good. From a hiring standpoint within, we bring in the right people, right? We don't go for the quick transaction, I want to be rich quick, because that never worked anywhere. And if it did, they're probably on the news for bad reasons. But at the end of the day, we hire strategically, had a few employees go because of the business went that way, right? We don't deal with people that make the business transactional anymore. We are leader of human, and we are also moving humans from one situation that affects their families as well too. So being transactional has more than just getting the sale or getting the client deal. You're moving humans and families, and your goal from a recruiting standpoint is to make sure every step that they go, especially if they go with you, is a better one.
Yeah.
So taking the aspect of pride behind it and really making sure that whoever is attached to your brand is with the same mindset is huge. Because I've made the mistakes early on of, let's get the sales. And that's fun and games. But at the end of the day, it's great for the short term, not the long run. And that's just my experience.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting there because both when you spoke about it from a candidate perspective, but also your team, you kind of alluded to them both being a reflection of yourself. And, obviously it's something you want to be proud of. You put a candidate out, you want them to be there for the long haul, and I guess the same from a candidate experience, from a client side as well, that, each of them are a reflection of you, your business and your service. If it doesn't work out with a candidate, maybe you've not vetted the candidate properly, maybe you've not warned them of all those, the kind of the red flags and the roadblocks along the way. Maybe from a client perspective, you've not fully vetted them and actually really understood what their culture's like. And I guess from a consultant perspective, if you've got those people that are just chasing the paycheck, chasing those sort of quick wins, once again, it's going to be sort of a negative reflection on you and your business. I'm interested in understanding, obviously, your focus is very much on that human element within the recruitment process, which is interesting to hear. AI is, a big topic in the recruitment sphere or industry at the minute. And, on the one hand, you have people that are looking to kind of fully automate everything within their recruitment process, and people warning of the recruiter's role being entirely redundant. On the other end, you've got people saying, no, we're still on the phones, won't touch anything AI. And then we have a lot of people in the middle. So I'm interested in understanding from your perspective, whether you think, there is what the kind of the opportunities, and kind of drawbacks are to AI, and how you kind of envision it, impacting the recruitment industry.
Yeah. So, it's something that we use in a balance, right? So AI has been the buzzword and the main theme that we've been hearing for a while now. In my industry, we use it for daily tasks, right? We do it for automation of that. Some people use it for recruiting. I don't. And the reason why is we see all of these papers all the time, right? There's dozens and dozens of qualified candidates for every one position that we have. But at the end of the day, and as you know too, you got to work with this individual. And there's a lot of good resumes, but what you don't see on a resume is character. And I think that is the one thing that AI can't really predict. I've had, companies reach out to me about having platforms for AI for this, that, and the other, as far as recruiting candidates or, bringing in a new pool of business. It works perfectly for certain situations. But for a human aspect, that is probably the biggest downfall. It saves time sorting, it saves time doing the tasks, but you still deal with an individual at the end of the day. And AI can't tell you that, they called off 30 times just because they slept in, or, they can't take criticism. There's so many things that are still within the human approach that AI going forward it's going to be involved, but it needs to be balanced.
Yeah.
In our process, it will probably be the same. It's so beneficial for so many things, but at the end of the day, like we talked about, it's a relationship and a human still. So we got to let that human to human.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting, and it's something I'm hearing quite a lot at the moment. Some people are very bullish on AI, and they've just said, look, automate as much as possible, and then probably gradually phasing down the headcount. But most of the people do seem to be somewhere in the middle. As I said, you do get the kind of the dinosaurs that still work off the yellow pages or your kind of directories over there and running off phone books. But I think it's that blended approach, because at the end of the day, longevity within the industry means that you are going to have to establish those long-term relationships. And AI, despite all the content it can put out there and all the automations it can do to create engagement and whatnot, it's not going to replicate that human at the end of the line, or as you were kind of mentioning earlier with the CTO, going and seeing them face to face, having a chat, having a coffee, and actually shaking their hand, seeing the white of their eyes. So I think that kind of blended approach definitely seems to be the favored way, sort of going forward. And talking about looking forward, obviously you've been incredibly successful, despite growing your business in a very troubling time, very difficult time with the pandemic, with kind of the layoffs, the remote working, which we've not even talked about. Where do you see your business in the next sort of 3 to 5 years?
Definitely growing. We're focusing more and more in the IT space. We were engineering and IT in the past, but with AI in general, it creates so many jobs between governance, between controlling, between just across the board. So yeah, we're going to focus on a lot of the AI and the tech stuff because it's not going to go away. There's going to be ways to regulate and govern that, and with that creates jobs and opportunities and perfect opportunities for a staffing industry. So we're growing. We're going to use it within our organization in a balanced way as too. And because of everything that's out there in the market, we really see ourselves within the next 3 years, either probably close to doubling the headcount of what we have now and maybe opening another office in the Midwest. Our roadmap took a very bumpy way to get there, but because of the rough situations that we were able to weather through, we have a lot of stuff going our way. We have the right people in the buildings that we're talking to, and that's creating buzz and opportunity for us. So within the next 3 years, we're really trying to grow even more and really just stay in the tech space.
Perfect. Interesting. Last, I guess, kind of a quick fire question for you. So how important then are people, how important are your people in your business to kind of facilitate and achieve that growth over the next 3 to 5 years?
They're everything, absolutely everything. You can't do anything by yourself. And if the vision's there, the leadership's there, and the support's there, we're good. If I'm not supporting, I'm not leading, and I'm not empowering, we're going down. So the people are everything. AI, like I said, it will be balanced. But at the end of the day, you remember the face and the people that you spoke to and the way you felt after that conversation. So I got to make sure and to empower them so they can empower others.
Yeah, well, there's as you were saying, that a saying kind of came back to my mind. I'm probably going to butcher it, but something along the lines of people won't remember what you said, they won't remember what you did, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. And I think that's so true. I mean, even in the recruitment kind of space, if you can make candidates, if you can make clients, if you can make everyone involved, your consultants feel really valued, feel really safe, feel really engaged, then that's obviously gonna lead them to kind of come back and work with you going forward. Before we wrap up entirely, what advice would you give to recruitment leaders out there who are facing some of the challenges you've experienced yourself? What would be some sort of words of wisdom you'd impart on them?
Yeah, adversity is going to come. There's going to be times, multiple times where there is no vision on how to get through a tough situation. At the end of the day, you are responsible for you. So really tough it out and trust in the work that you put in for yourself, and trust the process as well too. You do the right things, you do the good things, it's going to come back to you. You just need to find a way to weather a storm if you have one, and stick through it. At the end of the day, we are the motor of our companies, and if we're not running, they're not running.
So be patient, build up that grit and resilience, and those challenging situations can be probably a perfect opportunity to stand out in a crowded market, I guess, the same way you did during the pandemic, offering pro bono services and offering really real value to your clients, which undoubtedly has been kind of, catalytic in your growth, coming out the pandemic. We've covered so much on this episode, from obviously hearing about how you built and scaled your business at quite a troubling time, the value you place on, people and human connections, the blended approach you take to using and infusing AI with your recruitment process, but still keeping that personal kind of interaction at its core. So I think there's probably a lot of takeaways for the listeners. So I appreciate you sharing all those insights. I thank you all, obviously the listeners, for tuning in. Hope they've got as much value out of this conversation as I've done. Any kind of closing final thoughts from you, Alex?
No, I just want to thank you. I've been following what you've been doing on LinkedIn, and I appreciate the opportunity to come on here and speak with you. Really excited to follow what you've been doing. And I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to speak with you.
Perfect.